junior doctors in England have voted to reject the government's proposed new contract on pay and conditions, despite being urged to accept it by union leaders. The British Medical Association and the government had agreed on the proposals following a series of walkouts earlier this year. Our health editor Hugh Pym has more.
With marches at Westminster, pickets outside hospitals and junior doctors in England for the first time boycotting emergency care, it's been a prolonged and bitter dispute. In May, the doctors' union, the BMA, agreed a contract deal with the government, but now members have rejected it. After the result, showing 58% voting no, I caught up with two junior doctors, one who voted in favour and one against the proposed contract.
I voted yes because I was concerned that should we vote no, some of the gains we'd made by, asking the government to listen to our concerns, all the protests, the industrial action, would be lost, and that was my main concern.
I voted to reject the contract. Despite the fact that significant gains were made, there were still a lot of issues that hadn't been fully addressed. I still felt that the contract was discriminatory. It still didn't really address the issues of recruitment and retention, which right now are more important than ever.
The contract agreement involved a basic pay rise of between 10 and 11%, with a reduction in unsocial hours pay and an allowance after working more than 6 weekends per year. Equal opportunities concerns, mainly affecting women, were addressed.
They negotiated a deal which they said was a good deal, and that's now been rejected by the BMA membership, and it makes it very difficult for us as a government to know who we should negotiate with, or indeed whether there's any point in having these negotiations.
So the question is, what happens now? The BMA junior doctors leader has resigned. His former colleagues meet tomorrow to decide their next move, though further strikes seem unlikely at this stage. Ministers, meanwhile, seem set to press on with introducing the new contract in the autumn. It's hardly going to be a calm few months for the NHS, with confusion over the junior doctors' contract adding to the uncertainty over the economy and what that might mean for public finances, and uncertainty over political leadership ahead of the arrival of a new Prime Minister. Hopes that the dispute might end have been dashed. The future direction for government relations with doctors is far from clear. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
With me now is Lauren Gavaghan, a junior doctor and senior registrar in psychiatry. Thanks for coming in. Did you vote for the new contract or against it?
I voted no for the contract.
Why was that?
I mean, I think that obviously 58% of the turnout, which was 68%, voted no. And I think it was a very difficult decision across the board, and I had a very difficult time deciding which way I would vote. And ultimately it came down to a number of points. Probably I won't be able to explain them all here, but the safeguards that are in place for junior doctors overworking I did not feel were sufficient, and a lot of junior doctors also have that view. There are concerns around what happens when a doctor overworks and how they report that to those in sort of more senior positions. And I think that it's a particular part of the contract that has not been tested, that we would like to see piloted to make sure it works before rolling it out for 54,000 doctors. There are huge concerns with whistleblowing protection. So this is really what happens if a doctor in the NHS feels that things are unsafe. Who do they go to? How do they report that? And are they protected if they speak up about things being unsafe? So those are the sort of main issues for me. There were also huge issues with discrimination, so against our less than full-time working colleagues. So primarily women, people that are carers and people with disabilities. And I think that we are in 2016. We cannot accept a contract that discriminates. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And I think we have to preface everything now, particularly in the current political climate, with two things. The first is that Jeremy Hunt based the entire premise of this argument upon this idea that people were dying at weekends, and actually a lot of that research has been disproved. The second thing is that David Cameron, our Prime Minister, made this manifesto pledge, which clearly they want to keep to, which was this 7-day NHS. The public, the country, has yet to see a plan for the 7-day NHS.
All right, but the BMA, your own union, backed this contract and backed the deal that they made with the government. They just got it wrong, did they?
Well, I don't
the people representing you.
Yeah, no, I don't think we would say that, but I think what's important to remember, Johan Malawana, the chair of the JDC, who has resigned today, and that was always his plan, that if it was a no vote, he would resign. He has done the most excellent job in getting this far with this contract.
But not good enough. You rejected what his proposal was.
So Johan Malawana did indeed say yes to this contract, and he wanted us to go forward with it. However, there are lots of people who don't necessarily feel that, and I think we've got to remember that a union is its members, and just because this deal was sort of accepted, it doesn't mean it's the best deal.
Do you think the fact that the union itself suggested this was a good idea and the membership have said no, do you think that could affect the way that the public see this dispute now? Because you've had the backing. It's gone down a little bit, certainly since the 24-hour strike, but it's still holding up pretty well.
Yes.
Do you think that's going to be affected now because of this decision?
Well, I think what the public are seeing now, in the context of what's going on in the last 2 weeks of the EU referendum, is that there's a lot of propaganda and there's a lot of frank lies. And we've seen by this big NHS bus and this promise of 350 million that actually then they backtracked on. A lot of mistruths are told about the NHS. And I hope that the public can trust their doctors to know what goes on the floor in the NHS hospitals and actually where we want to go with it. Obviously, the next stage will be getting new leadership and actually trying to work out really how we understand and how we get recognised the safe staffing levels. These are key issues in the NHS that aren't being addressed.
If the new leadership comes forward and suggests that strike action is the way forward, would you, do you think, take part in that?
I think at the moment I wouldn't like to comment on that because I think strike action is certainly not what we want to happen. Sure. We've really made gains. I think we're in a positive position, but in the chaos that is ensuing in this country, I don't think now is the time. And Jeremy Hunt said it in an interview just now. He said, I think we have to rapidly move forwards. I would absolutely disagree. There is no rush. This is an orchestrated rush. There's nothing to say we have to rush into this 7-day NHS when we don't know what it is. We need to take stock. We need some sensible, clear minds and different minds. I think that's a great thing to have. We've seen by what's happening in the country that people are making very rapid decisions. It's not making any sense and the country is in chaos. What we need is sensible people making sensible decisions from now on, really.
Is there likely to be an imposition of this contract?
Well, they've said they are mindful of imposing it. I think the language is interesting.
So there's still wiggle room there, you think?
Well, I think there is, and I think certainly the Justice for Health team, so our colleagues that are potentially going to look at taking the government to court, will be looking into that, because imposition was one of the key factors. Actually, are they legally able to impose a contract? And that needs to be answered.
Sure.
So I hope not.
OK. Indeed. Lauren Gavaghan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.